What's up everyone, this is Daniel with DB Studios and welcome to the third part in my 2020 hardships venting slash coping session. You would think after 3 parts I would have a more legitimate and concrete name for this, but I don't. So 2020 was a really hard year for many of us. Of course, we each experienced it very differently, but one thing that we all have in common is that, life changed quite a bit for each and every one of us. So, and I'm making this 4 video little series for this to begin to open up and share some of the hardships I went through during this year, as a way of begin to establish common grounds, and because sometimes talking about it is a great way to flush out some of the bad emotions and really find a way to relate to other people. So I've made 2 other videos so far. The first one being what it was like graduating during COVID, and the second one being like what it was like losing my job during COVID. And you might ask me, Daniel, how can this get any worse? But believe me, it's going to get a lot harder. However, in this part, I wanted to take a moment and just reflect on some of the things that I've learned from the pandemic, the coronavirus. Not necessarily that the virus taught me these things, but because of the virus, those things became apparent to me. And I believe for many of us, we were put in a situation where we had no other choice. So in this video, I am going to share with you 5 lessons that I learned during the year 2020 from the coronavirus. So once again, everyone has been affected very differently from the COVID pandemic. And honestly, for me, it's not that I'm saying if you didn't learn this lesson, something's wrong with you. And I'm really not going to dictate like how certain people should feel coming out of 2020. Some people may have lost a loved one, may be really hurt or distraught by many things. Another person, probably not too much happened to them. But one thing's for sure, as I mentioned before, nothing is gonna really quite be the same. This actually connects nicely to the first point. 1, nothing is permanent. Why is this a lesson? Isn't this obvious, Daniel? Everything dies, all this stuff. That's not really what I mean by that. By nothing is permanent, I can recall in the beginning of 2020, during New Year's, there were all these celebrities singing, oh yeah, this is gonna be our year. All these people saying everything's gonna be in the past, all this stuff. But even with all these hopes and high expectations, people saying, oh, I'm gonna have this goal, I planned all of this out. All of that can become nothing in literally seconds. And it's the sad reality that nothing we do in this life is really permanent. Not even, having a job is permanent. Literally, recently, I was supposed to have a job interview, and the person who was supposed to give me the interview did not show up for it. So even your job interviews are not guaranteed. It's not permanent. So keep an open mind that not everything may go according to plan. It's good to have backup plans and contingencies, but even those things can go wrong in just a moment's notice as well, because not everything is in our control. So I'm not favoring or saying that you should have no plan whatsoever. Plan things, but don't be disappointed if things don't happen the way you want it to. And I think that's the first thing we've learned. Like, so many things just stopped working and everyone felt despondent because all their hopes was in that plan. They put all their hopes and faith in 1 or 2 or 3 things happening, and when those things don't happen, they lose hope. That's why I'm trying to tell you, because nothing is permanent, don't put all your faith in one plan, but be open to things changing, and by being a little bit flexible, you'll be able to adapt to various situations. Granted, some situations will be a little bit harder to adapt to than others, of course. Now, this leads to the next point, which is regarding health. I think one of the most impactful things that I've learned in 2020 was that health is so important. And health on many different levels. The way you eat, getting regular exercise, and even sleeping. Yes, it's the 3 pillars to everyone's health. your diet, your exercise, and sleeping, of course. And I know for the most part, including myself, I was like a workaholic, and so was many people. Besides the Sabbath, I would never rest. And I'm not Jewish, by the way. I'm a 7-day Adventist, if any of you are wondering. But besides that, I would never rest. I was always working, and I never take a break. And it's just crazy to me that I finally started getting rest, once things slowed down regarding my academics, regarding jobs. And if you want to know more about how those things really played out, see the first 2 videos after this video if you'd like. It's okay if you don't see it in the correct order. But for me, I finally started getting rest. And rest is important for many reasons. I'm not really someone who is an expert on the human body, but I do know a few things here and there. So the cells in your body that helps you fight against diseases and sickness is replenished every single night when you are getting sleep. And when you're not getting sleep, it diminishes quite a bit. And that's a very, very basic way of putting it. I could get a little bit more complicated, but once again, I'm not an expert. I'm sure each of you know way more about this than I do, of course. If we're not getting enough sleep, we're more susceptible to diseases. It's crazy to me how some people ended up in the hospital who were fit and in great health and young, and they ended up in the hospital because of that. But a lot of things play a role in that, pre-existing conditions, things like that. I understand regarding the virus, and I know this sounds like a very specific example, but I think it's something we can keep in mind for everything. If you're sick and you're not resting, how will you have the strength and clarity to do your work? How will you have the strength to do the things you enjoy? If you're not taking care of your health in terms of fitness, you'll be more susceptible to sickness. You'll be weaker as well. And if you're not eating right, believe it or not, what you eat actually does contribute to your mood. Even the first thing you eat in the morning, people who end up eating bacon, eggs, things like that, as soon as they wake up, studies have shown that they have a lower amount of energy than those who start off with something healthier like oatmeal, a fruit, things like that, which I'm not telling you all how to eat, but I'm just beginning to illustrate that even what you choose to eat first in the morning even begins to impact your health. So think about what you eat in the long run over a long period of time. Think about that. Being more mindful of our health is very important. And I'm not just saying that in order to be prepared, in case another virus comes along, but it helps you in your everyday activity. It helps you have a lot more energy in the work you're doing, and it also affects your attitude as you're thinking about your work. Less sleep, you're going to be more cranky. More sleep, you're going to feel better. You exercise, the endorphins fill your body, you feel more pumped as well. So that's another thing to consider. Putting your health first. I considered myself to be a healthy person. Even then, I wanted to take precautions. I did take some vitamins to increase my body's immune system. So it never hurts to be too cautious and really find ways to improve your health. The better your health is, the stronger and more able you will be when facing different challenges or even your day-to-day tasks. So steps 3 and 4 will kind of be a contradiction to one another, but I still felt like it was important to include both of them, and you'll see why in just a minute. So step 3 is to be productive. So with COVID, many people lost their work, or they're not commuting to school, so they have extra time at home. And with all this extra time, what do you do with it? A lot of people form, unfortunately, habits which made them a little bit lazier. They're not doing anything, but with this extra time, you can get all those hobbies that you said you wanted to get done. You said, when I have time, I'm going to learn to cook. When I have time, I'm going to draw, do this. I'm going to share my work. I'm going to promote this. But now you have the time. What is the excuse? If you're not doing it now when you have ample time, when will be the time? You understand? So it's about forming the habit of learning to be productive and learning to, not be too stagnant and, taking care of all these tasks that you wanted to do. And in doing so, a lot of people felt depressed, because of their work or, loved ones, things like that. So by doing that, it's also a great way to keep yourself busy, and also a great way to distract yourself, and I would say in a positive way. And by distracting yourself, you're not constantly stressed out. Anxieties can begin to decrease over time if you do suffer from anxiety, and especially depression. It's a great way to just keep yourself not focused too much on your problems. So being productive is such an important thing. But point number 4 is a contradiction in the sense that I would say it's okay not to do anything. So while this is seemingly a contradiction, it isn't at the same time. It's about learning to take breaks, which of course is very important, because a lot of people, we've overworked ourselves so much where it impacted our health, our relationship with other people. But now with COVID, many of us was really forced to, or encouraged to, I would say, spend more time with our family, or spend less time working, I should say, and doing other things. And some of us feel this urge. We feel like if we're not working, we're not important, we're useless, or all these things. But I want to say it's okay to slow down, because by slowing down, you begin to see things from a different perspective. You begin to build your health. And by resting, which is so important, our bodies were not made to run like machines. We're not machines. You even turn off your machine. Machines can overheat. How much more does the human body need rest? See what the rest has done for the environment, but I'm not going to get too much into that. And we spend time with loved ones. We realize things we haven't realized. We're able to mend relationships that probably weren't so good, or you're put in a position where you have to face that person who your relationship isn't too good with, but eventually you can make up. I know for some people it wasn't so good, being locked up inside. Unfortunately, abuse has increased. So a lot of things, I'm not saying this is like a perfect solution or anything, but a general idea I'm extracting from the fact that people were essentially forced to do less is that resting allows you to clear your mind, and it's really something that's essential for the body. Not overworking yourself, not overstressing yourself. And it's okay, you're not less of a person, or you're not less important just because you decide to take a break. It's actually natural, and it's actually very healthy. Actually, the human body is even meant to take periodic naps throughout the day, believe it or not. So keep that in mind next time, you hear something about nap time. And now that's actually a perfect segue to our last point. Lesson number 5 that I learned is to focus on what you can control. I think what impacted people the most during 2020, the coronavirus, is that a lot of us were focused on the things that were beyond our control. So some examples of this I already listed. For example, work. Some people lost work, and people would literally blame themselves, like, I'm not good enough, I'm not talented enough, I'm not valuable enough of an employee. All these things people will fill their mind with, or even things such as not being able to go out, see their loved ones, all this stuff. It made people feel depressed, or even the fact that some people were sick and they had to deal with the virus. From so many perspectives, people were just really upset, and it weighed a lot of us down. And all these things are understandable. I'm not saying any of these things are unreasonable. If we begin to change our attitudes about certain things when we're in a really bad situation, it can give us a lot more clarity and help us to be productive and not be so bogged down by things that we literally can do nothing about. For example, when it comes to work, going back to that, if we begin to use our time to be productive, now that we have extra time, getting the things done that we say we wanted to get done for months or years and never got done, and finally starting it, you feel accomplished. You prove to yourself that, hey, you are capable and you do have the ability to get things done. It isn't your fault. And in doing so, you ultimately begin to get over it or cope with the situation, and it helps you a lot. Of course, there's still the issue of money, and I say do what you can. If you can find like a small gig that you can do, or even acquire financial assistance. It's really tough, and a lot of these things nothing can really be done about it for the most part. But doing what you can in your power and focusing on saying, hey, I can make money by doing this, or hey, I can use my time to do this. If you focus on those things and you are productive, you will get things done instead of being impacted by the overall situation and then doing absolutely nothing about it. Which, as I said, it's okay to take breaks. It's okay to not constantly do things or make a business, while during quarantine or whatever. That's completely fine. But the idea is that while focusing on the things you can control, you are teaching yourself that, hey, it's not hopeless. You're strengthening yourself by doing things which otherwise you might not have had time to do. So those were 5 lessons that I've learned because the coronavirus was around. And honestly, I can say the person that I was last year around the time where, we first started hearing rumors about the coronavirus till this point, these are like 2 different people. And honestly, I had to learn these things by going through the process. I was upset. I felt really, really down. But I feel that when you go through something that's really hard or something that's really different, I should say, it's important to stop and reflect on what has happened. That way we use the past to learn from what happened and not to repeat what happened, So really, these things stuck out to me, and I felt like these are things I'm going to personally keep in mind. Like, for me, I feel like I don't know if there's any guarantee that 2021 will be better than 2020, but even if it's not, I'm going to keep these things in my mind and just have the mindset that nothing's permanent, to really try to take care of my health during this time, not to constantly stress myself, to try to make use of the time that I do have, but then also to try to, take breaks whenever I can, but also to wrap it up in a nice bow to focus on what I can do. So let me know in the comment section below, what was some of the biggest lessons that you've learned during the year 2020? How did you deal with these lessons, and what would your advice be for other people? Share with all of us in the comments, and I would love to read these replies, and if anyone wants advice, I could say something, and this could be a nice little community where we can talk to one another and relate to one another. So there's going to be one more part left, and it's a really, really big one, and I have been keeping to myself for quite some time, but it's time to come out about it. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, of course, I will continue to have tutorials and other videos on this channel. So I hope to see you all in the next video.